Hey there, friends. Welcome to a story that will chill your bones and keep you on the edge of your seat. I've got something truly special just for you, so make sure to listen closely. This tale is all about a mysterious village hidden beneath a lake, where strange dreams and eerie voices will keep you guessing what's next. As we dive into these unsettling waters together, I want to know where you're tuning in from, so leave a comment below. And if you want to learn more about what's coming up, click the link in the description. Are you ready for a haunting adventure? Let's begin. I stood on the edge of the lake, staring down at the water's surface. It was calm and still, but I could feel something beneath it calling to me. I was part of a team of archaeologists, and we had come to discover the ancient village that everyone said was hidden below the lake. The stories warned about it, how it was lost to time and how something dark lingered in the depths. But those warnings didn't scare me, they only made me more curious. As we set up our equipment, the sky turned gray, casting an eerie shadow over the water. The air felt heavy and a strange stillness surrounded us. I could hear whispers carried by the wind, soft and ghostly. What did they say? I asked my friend Mia, but she just shrugged. I didn't hear anything, she replied, looking unnerved. Ignoring the chill that crept down my spine, we began our excavation. As we dug deeper into the lake bed, my excitement grew. I was uncovering pieces of pottery and old tools, signs of life from a time long gone. But as night fell, the atmosphere changed. The shadows grew longer, and the once familiar sounds of nature turned into something strange and unsettling. That night I couldn't sleep. As I lay in my tent, strange dreams filled my mind. I dreamt of the village with its little houses made of wood and stone. I saw people walking the streets, their faces cloudy and indistinct. They seemed sad. I wanted to reach out to them, to help them, but something held me back. Their soft cries echoed in my ears, and I woke up in a sweat, heart racing. The next day I shared my dream with the team. I heard voices, I said, my words trembling a bit. They weren't just dreams. It felt real. Mia looked worried. Maybe it's the lake playing tricks on us. We need to be careful. But I didn't listen. My curiosity was too strong to ignore. As we continued our work, the voices grew louder. I started hearing them even when I was awake. Sometimes they sounded like laughter, and other times they were filled with sorrow. One night, I found myself wandering near the lake's edge, mesmerized by the sound of a lilting voice. Come closer, it beckoned softly. I almost stepped into the water when Mia suddenly grabbed my arm. What are you doing? She shouted, pulling me back. I shivered and shook my head, trying to clear the fog in my brain. The days turned into nights, and I realized my friends were starting to act strangely too. They would sit in silence, staring at the water with vacant eyes. Even the sun seemed afraid to shine on us. One afternoon, we discovered an ancient necklace covered in mud and algae. I brushed it off, and the moment I held it up, a wave of coldness washed over me. The whispers intensified, flooding my mind with voices begging for release. Mia dared me to wear the necklace, and before I could think twice, I slipped it around my neck. At that moment, I felt a rush of energy, like I had connected with the village's lost souls. I closed my eyes, and their cries became clear. They were trapped. They needed help. Panic took over, and I ripped the necklace off, throwing it back into the water. Did you hear them? I asked Mia. They need us. But instead of excitement, I only saw fear in her eyes. You have to stop. We're tampering with something we don't understand, she pleaded. I felt torn. My desire to help warred with the fear that wrapped around me like vines. Yet something deep within me wanted to know more. I convinced the team to stay longer, to uncover more about the village and its history. With every passing day, the voices grew stronger, almost desperate, like a chorus of lost souls crying for release. I started having more dreams, but these weren't just visions. They were warnings. One night, I dreamt of a storm brewing over the lake. Dark clouds churned above, and I saw the village as it had been, alive and vibrant. People danced in the streets, but then the sky darkened and water began to rise. Get out! I wanted to scream, but no sound came. The water surged, swallowing the village whole as the villagers screamed in terror. I woke with a start, heart pounding, knowing we were tampering with something we should leave alone. The next day we found more artifacts, but instead of excitement, a heavy dread filled my gut. I saw shadows darting around our campsite, dark figures slipping in and out of view. It's just the trees, I told myself, but deep down I knew something was wrong. Mia and the others were also feeling it. Their faces were pale and they didn't speak much. One evening, as we stood by the lake, I noticed that the water was unusually still. There was no sound, no ripple. It felt like the lake was holding its breath. I leaned closer, wanting to catch a glimpse of what lay beneath, when suddenly, a roar echoed through the air. It was unlike anything I had ever heard, combined with a deep rumble that felt like it was coming from the earth itself. My heart raced as I stumbled back. "What was that?" I gasped. "Something's angry," Mia whispered, eyes wide with fear. We all stood frozen, the reality of our situation sinking in. I scrambled for answers, wondering what we had awakened. That night, the dreams intensified again, more vivid and terrifying than ever. Each dream was a different story, a glimpse into the past, and they all ended the same way, with the village drowning. The next morning, something felt different. The atmosphere was electric. When we gathered for breakfast, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. "Are you okay?" Mia asked, her voice shaky. I nodded, but I could see the worry etched on her face. Taking a deep breath, I urged everyone to push through. We needed to uncover the truth. As we dug deeper, I started to notice that things were mysteriously disappearing. Tools, food, even our personal belongings vanished without a trace. Each time I would look for something, I could hear the water whispering my name. "Come back," it would call softly, making my skin crawl. One evening, we set up a camera to capture the strange occurrences. We watched the footage together, half expecting to see something spooky. But instead of ghosts, we saw only shadows flitting in the corner of the frame. I felt a chill run down my spine, and I was sure they were watching us, those lost villagers trapped beneath the water. That night, the storm hit, fierce and wild. Lightning lit up the sky, and the wind howled like a wounded animal. We huddled in our tents, afraid to sleep, but the voices continued to call, more desperate than ever. Suddenly, I woke to a cry, a shriek that pierced through the storm. I scrambled out of my tent, heart racing. "What was that?" I called out, but no one answered. I ran to the water's edge. The storm was fierce, but I felt drawn closer. The lake churned and bubbled, almost alive. I felt the pull of the village, the lost souls begging me to help them. My feet stepped into the cold water, and I shivered. I couldn't resist. I needed to know what happened. But as I waded further in, something gripped my leg, pulling me under. Panic washed over me as I struggled, my heart racing. I gasped for air, but the grip was strong. I looked down into the dark depths of the lake, and for a moment, I thought I saw the outlines of people reaching out to me, their faces twisted in anguish. I fought harder and finally broke free from the grip. I stumbled back to shore, soaked and horrified. Coughing up water, I looked around for my friends, realizing they were gone. "Mia, where are you?" I called, panic rising in my chest. The water continued to swirl ominously, the echoes of laughter and crying mixing into an almost haunting melody. The storm raged on, but I was filled with a sense of purpose. I had to find out what had happened to the village. As I ran back to our campsite, I noticed the shadows moving closer, whispering my name. Terrified yet determined, I knew we had to leave, but also that we had to uncover the truth first. I gathered all the strength I had and called to the lake, "What do you want from us?" The water stilled, almost as if it was listening. Silence fell over the camp, and I could feel the weight of its gaze upon me. I leaned closer, desperate for answers. Then it happened. A vision came to me like a flash of lightning. I saw the village again, thriving before the flood. I felt laughter and joy, but then the storm swept in, a furious rage that drowned their cries. I understood their sorrow. They were not just lost, they were trapped in a never-ending nightmare. I stumbled back, heart heavy with their pain. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, and a voice emerged from the water, deep and resonant. "Free us," it demanded. The team's silhouettes appeared behind me, faces pale and eyes wide with fear. They had returned. "Did you hear that?" Mia whispered, trembling. I nodded, realizing we were in over our heads. We needed to decide. Would we continue to dig or would we leave? My heart raced as I looked back at the water, torn between curiosity and fear. We huddled together, voices overlapping as we discussed our next steps, desperation palpable. "We can't leave now," I insisted, my voice firm. "They need us to help them." But Mia shook her head. "We're in danger. We have to go." But before we could decide, something in the water glowed softly, calling us back. I stepped closer, feeling a strange pull. The lake seemed to shimmer, and I saw visions of the villagers reaching out to me again, their eyes pleading. "We have to help them," I said, desperate for my friends to understand. Mia stared at me, fear clouding her gaze. "What if we're too late?" she accused, her voice trembling. But I knew we couldn't turn our backs on them now. And yet, the longer we stayed, the more the voices harmonized, swirling around us, drowning out our thoughts. My heart pounded as I made a decision. "We're going in," I shouted, and the team looked at me wide-eyed with disbelief. But before I could explain, the lake surged and the voices wrapped around us, pulling us toward the water again. "No!" Mia screamed, trying to hold on to a tree. But the darkness enveloped us, and I felt us being whisked away, deeper and deeper into the lake's embrace. I reached out for my friends, but the pull was too strong. The water closed in, and the village, the lost souls, surrounded me. They were here, alive in their sorrow. The last thing I saw was the glow of the village above the water, beckoning me to join them. I was afraid but couldn't help but feel a strange sense of belonging. Just as I was about to lose consciousness, a single thought filled my mind. I would either be their savior or be lost myself. I was suspended in darkness, torn between worlds, yet I could still hear the desperate cries echoing through the lake. Suddenly, the world shifted and the village came into view. I gasped as I found myself standing on the streets, now vibrant again, colorful like a memory I'd long forgotten. People walked past me, their faces joyful but tinged with sadness. They turned to me, their eyes wide with hope. They needed me to help them find peace and rejoin the world above. What would I do? How could I rescue them from their fate? The weight of their sorrow pressed down on me, and I knew I had to face whatever darkness lay ahead. I took a step forward, and the villagers gathered around me, their whispers both a song of sorrow and a plea for freedom. And just like that, the story continues, a path yet to be forged, threads of history tangled within the depths of the lake, waiting for someone daring enough to uncover the truth. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the villagers' hope resting on my shoulders. The atmosphere was thick and heavy, as if the air itself was charged with a strange energy. I stood in the village as it hummed with life around me, the cheerful faces colliding with a deeper, unsettling feeling in my gut. This place had its secrets, and I could sense them lurking just below the surface. I wandered down a narrow path between houses, feeling so small and lost among the warm colors and familiar sights. Laughter echoed in the air, but underneath it, I heard a different sound. A low, eerie whisper flowing from the lake like a secret nobody wanted to share. "Help us! Help us!" I could hear it slipping into my mind and wrapping around my thoughts like cold tendrils. I shook my head trying to clear it, but the whispers didn't fade. As I walked, I noticed that the villagers' smiles didn't reach their eyes. Their faces were pale, and there was a strange emptiness behind their cheerful expressions, like they were hiding something. I approached a young girl with bright blue eyes, her hair flowing like autumn leaves. "What happened to you?" I asked, but she just stared back at me, her lips twitching slightly as if she wanted to say something, but no words came forth. Then just like that, the sky darkened. Shadows stretched and twisted, spilling over the village as thunder rumbled in the distance. The laughter that once filled the air turned into a haunting melody, echoing around me, reminding me of the storm that raged above the lake. The villagers began to step back, their expressions shifting from joy to fear, and I realized I wasn't supposed to be here. "What is happening?" I shouted, but the girl only pointed to the water. My gaze followed her finger, and I saw the surface of the lake bubbling and churning, as if something monstrous was awakening beneath. The water boiled in a fit of rage, and with every passing moment, I felt the tension grow heavier around me, as if the lake was a wild beast, awakening from a long slumber, furious at the disturbance. Suddenly, everything went still, and I could hear my heart beating in the silence. The villagers vanished, thrown into shadows like smoke in a gust of wind. I was alone, surrounded by towering trees that creaked ominously, draped in darkness that swallowed the path ahead. My breath quickened as I felt the weight of unseen eyes watching from the shadows. The whispers morphed again into sobbing cries, echoing around me, pulling at my heartstrings. I felt lost, a wanderer in a place that was both beautiful and terrifying. The chilling cries seeped into my thoughts, begging me to find them. "You're the one," the voices insisted, as if they knew me, and my heart raced with the dreadful realization that I had become a part of their story. I stumbled back toward the path, desperate to escape, but everything was different now. The trees towered above me, their branches curling like twisted fingers, reaching for me, urging me to come closer. In my gut, I felt fear but also a strange sense of wanting to understand. I needed to know what had happened to these villagers, what connection I had forged with their spirits. Another flash of lightning illuminated the area, and I caught a glimpse of a figure darting behind a tree. I squinted into the darkness and called out, "Hello? Who's there?" My voice trembled, and a low chuckle filled the air before fading into the wind. I turned, frantically searching for the source, but found only silence. Then I felt it, cold fingers brushing my skin as if someone had reached out to me from the shadows. My heart raced. I gripped the fabric of my shirt, the chill creeping into my bones. Panic ensued, and I sprinted back toward the lake, desperation fueling my steps. The whispering grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. The air changed, becoming thicker, heavier, almost suffocating. I looked down at the lake, its surface glimmering under the flashes of lightning. My heart pounded as the apparition of a woman appeared, rising from the depths, soaked and serene. Her eyes were dark and hollow, stained with sadness. Her lips moved, but I could only hear the echoes of her cries, "Help us!" The moment was haunting, pulling me back toward the water. Fear and curiosity tangled within me, and I struggled against the urge to dive into the lake. "What can I do?" I shouted, desperate for answers. "How can I help you?" The image of the woman flickered and faded, but her words echoed in my mind, weighing me down like stones in a pocket. As thunder boomed overhead, the winds picked up. A figure silhouetted against the storm clouds materialized behind me, cloaked in shadow. I turned slowly, my nerves screaming, but couldn't see their face. "What do you want?" I cried, voice shaking. The figure lifted its hand slowly, beckoning me closer. "No." I yelled, recoiling, but it was too late. My feet moved as if they had a mind of their own, pulling me toward the dark figure as the rain began to pour. The sensation of dread washed over me, wrapping around my heart like a vice. I felt alive but also paralyzed by fear, the other villagers' cries blending with my own heartbeat as the figure stepped into the light for just a moment, revealing twisted features filled with sorrow and pain. Dread washed over me, intensifying like the storm. I gasped and stumbled back, searching for escape, but the lake had become a tempest. Waves crashed against the shore, sending sprays of icy water into the air. With every heartbeat, the cries grew louder, enveloping me in their longing, and fear surged through me. I had to find a way to break free from this nightmare. But just as I turned to run, the hands of the lost souls grabbed me from behind, pulling me back with a grip that felt vice-like. "Stay!" they shouted, their voices mingling in a cacophony of fear and longing. Bits of the village swirled in the breeze, shadows taunting me, whispering secrets I couldn't grasp. "You are part of us now." "No!" I screamed, thrashing in their grip, my mind racing. I felt the icy fingers digging into my arms, holding me captive, and my heart hammered wildly as I struggled against them. Panic surged through me, and I could still hear the echoes of their cries, drowning me in their sorrow. I had to escape, had to find a way to return to the surface, but the lake seemed to rise against me, its surface burbling hungrily. In that moment, I remembered the necklace I had thrown back into the water. The necklace was a key, and somehow, deep down, I felt I could unlock their suffering if I could reclaim it. Mustering every ounce of courage, I pushed against the hands clutching me, breaking free for a moment. "I will help you," I shouted into the storm, fear mixing with determination. With a newfound fire igniting within me, I sprinted toward the edge of the lake. The voices around me roared, a storm of disbelief and anger. I could feel the shadows chasing me, but I wouldn't allow them to pull me back. I leaped into the water, submerging completely as the cold enveloped me. The darkness pressed against my skin, but I refused to give up. I reached the bottom, feeling around for the necklace amidst the murky water, grit and despair swirling around me like a smothering fog. Just when I was about to give up, my fingers brushed against something cold and smooth. My heart raced as I grasped the necklace, feeling its weight in my palm. But the moment I touched it, a surge of emotion flooded through me. The sadness of the villagers, the anger of the water, and the cries for help washed through me like a tsunami. I felt my body being pulled upwards, the cold depths releasing me and the shadows recoiling. I broke the surface, gasping for air, holding the necklace tightly in my hand like a lifeline. The storm still raged, but I could feel a shift. Something was changing. The voices erupted into a frenzy around me, swirling like a mighty wind. "Free us! Free us!" I raised the necklace high, showing it to the storm. "I will help you," I shouted, barely able to hear myself over the crashing waves. "I promise." The storm halted for one brief moment, quieting as if holding its breath. With a deep breath, I knew I had to dive back in. With the necklace as my guide, I swam deep into the depths once again, heart pounding fiercely against my chest. I was ready to confront whatever else waited beneath the sinister surface. Through the milky water, the shapes of the villagers began to gather around me, their faces growing clearer. They formed a barrier of souls, their expressions flickering between happiness and anguish. As I held the necklace tightly, I closed my eyes and focused on the light that glimmered in the depths. "I'm here for you," I whispered, feeling the pulse of their desperation. The shadows around us morphed, twisting into dark shapes that threatened to pull us apart. "You cannot save them," they howled, the sound reverberating through the water and rattling my bones. But I pushed through the fear, willing my thoughts to break the barrier that kept the villagers trapped in this underwater prison. Feeling the power of the necklace, I called out, "You deserve peace." And in that instant, the necklace began to glow, casting light throughout the darkness, illuminating haunted faces filled with hope. The shadows recoiled, shrieking and twisting, their grasp loosening. I sensed something ancient, full of sorrow and pain, awakening from the depths of the lake. The voices of the villagers harmonized with mine, growing louder as I focused on their memories, childhood laughter, dreams of the future, and the love that once filled this village. As I channeled their energy through the necklace, waves of warmth washed over me, pushing back against the chilling shadows. The dark figures writhed in anguish, seeming to dissolve into the air as the bright light strengthened, flickering against shadows that were desperate to retain their hold. Tears streamed from my eyes, mixing with the water around me as I witnessed the release of their souls. One by one, they began to ascend, floating towards the surface, their faces shining with gratitude. I stayed submerged, my heart full of emotion, still holding the necklace until every lost spirit was swept up into the light of the storm. And just like that, their cries began to change. "Thank you, they echoed, their voices wrapping around me as each soul ascended into the shimmering light above. I felt a great burden lift, a wave of relief flooding over the lake. I knew the village was finally free. But just as I turned to swim back to the surface, I felt the cold grasp of the water again, stronger than before. The shadows returned, raging back as they realized their spell was failing. "You will pay for this," they shrieked, swirling around me like a cyclone. The storm above raged on, lightning flashing through the darkness, illuminating my path. I gripped the necklace tight, knowing I needed to get back to the surface. I swam as fast as I could, feeling their claws reaching for me, grabbing at my legs with a relentless vengeance. I could almost hear their angry voices, "You cannot escape." The water felt thick, almost alive as I struggled against the depths, fighting against the darkness pooling around me, trying to pull me back under. I paddled harder, focusing on the light above. I could see it shining brighter now, above the tumultuous waves, begging me to escape. With my last ounce of strength, I pushed up, breaking through the surface, gasping for breath as I emerged from the water. The storm still churned, but a calming light surrounded me, a soft glow washing over my skin. As I floated on the surface, I felt warmth envelop me, the whispers of the villagers wrapping around my heart in a comforting embrace. "Thank you," they said, their voices now soft and sweet, as if the storm had carried their joy to the stars above. And even as I looked back at the lake, a sense of finality washed over me. But even in that moment of peace, I knew the fight was not over. The shadows remained in the depths, bruised but not defeated. I had uncovered their secrets, but in doing so, I felt a link form between us. Their power still lingered, like a dark shadow cast by the light, promising that I wasn't done yet. And then the whispers returned, a haunting melody echoing from the depths. "You cannot leave, you are ours." My heart raced as the realization sunk in. The village was free, but I was now part of their story forever. Fear gripped me once again as I faced the reality of my choices, knowing the shadows would always be waiting, ready to pull me back into the darkness. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air against my skin, knowing I had to prepare for what was yet to come. The journey was not over, and I had to find a way to once again face the shadows lurking beneath the surface, a battle for freedom that was far from finished. And so, my story unfolds, filled with the whispers of lost souls, shadows waiting to reclaim their hold, and a haunting promise that would keep me tethered to the lake and its dark secrets. Would I find a way to break their curse once and for all, or would I become just another whisper in the dark? The fight was on, and I realized I had to uncover the truth of the village before it was too late. What will happen next, you might wonder? Join me and stay tuned as the next chapter unfolds, revealing the secrets hidden deep within the lake and the shadows that still loom. Don't forget to leave your comments. Where are you listening from? Let's dive deeper into the mystery together. As I floated on the lake's surface, I couldn't shake the lingering feeling of dread that clung to me like a wet blanket. The villagers were free, but a chill whispered through the air, reminding me that shadows still lurked beneath the water. The promise of their shadows hunting me, waiting for my moment of weakness, filled my mind with terror. I had to find a way to confront their darkness, to prove I could escape its grip. I took a moment to gather my thoughts and catch my breath, staring at the moon's reflection on the water. It glimmered like a beacon of hope but felt strangely deceptive, its beauty masking the chaos lurking beneath. My gaze fell on the necklace still clutched tightly in my hand. It pulsed softly as if alive, and a strange determination flowed through me. This had to be the key to understanding what had bound the villagers and why I felt so connected to their suffering. With my heart racing, I swam back to the shore, each stroke fueled by a mix of fear and resolve. I climbed up onto the shoreline, drenched and shaking from the cold of the lake. The storm raged above, the wind howling like a chorus of lost souls. But as I stood there, catching my breath, I noticed something strange. The trees around me started shifting and bending as if they were whispering secrets to each other. Shadows flickered behind them, and the heaviness of the atmosphere returned, pressing down on me. I felt eyes watching me, waiting to pounce. Just then, a chilling scream pierced through the night. It came from the woods, and my heart stopped cold. It echoed again, frantic and desperate, a voice I almost recognized. "Help. Please help me." I stood frozen in terror as the air crackled with electricity. The shadows grew darker and more pronounced, creeping closer, absorbing the light from the moon above. Without thinking, I took off running towards the sound. The forest loomed ahead, thick branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. The screams continued, echoing and overlapping, drawing me deeper into the woods. I had to find out where the cries were coming from. "Stay with me. I'm coming," I shouted, hoping to comfort whoever was calling for help. The trees closed in around me, their trunks thick and gnarled, wrapping me in their twisted embrace. I could barely see ahead, the shadows dancing with each pulse of lightning. The wind whipped through the branches, whispering unintelligible phrases, mixing with the cries. I stumbled further, chasing the sound of the voice, and soon I came upon a clearing in the woods. The air turned heavy, charged with an unnatural energy. In the center, a small, rotting hut stood, tall and crooked. Its windows were dark, and the door hung off its hinges, swinging slightly as if inviting me in. The voice was louder now, pleading with urgency. "Help. Please." I hesitated, knowing deep down that something was very wrong, but I couldn't ignore the cries. My body moved on pure instinct, and I pushed the door open. It creaked loudly, protesting against my intrusion. I found myself inside a dimly lit room filled with shadows. The air was thick with a foul smell, and I could make out shapes lurking in the corners. I flicked on my flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. The light revealed cracked walls covered in strange symbols that seemed to twist and swirl like living things. Every inch of the hut felt alive and watching, holding its breath as if waiting for something terrible to happen. I called out again, "Where are you? I'm here to help." But no one responded, the voice seemed to have vanished. The only sound was the creaking of the hut and my own breath echoing back at me, bouncing off the grimy walls. My heart raced as my eyes adjusted to the shadows. I could see figures surrounding me, their faces twisted in despair and desperation, eyes hollow and pleading. They reached out towards me, their hands gnarled and ghostly, and my heart pounded in my chest. I took a step back, trying to keep my fear at bay. "Please, what do you want?" I stammered, trying to hold on to my courage. One of the figures stepped closer, its mouth moving but no sound escaping. My breath caught as I realized it was the woman from the lake, her ethereal form shimmering like fleeting mist. She pointed towards the back of the hut, and for a moment, I saw hope reflected in her eyes. "What is it?" I asked, my voice trembling. The urgency of the moment filled the air. I stepped cautiously toward where she was pointing, sensing the pressure around me press in tighter. The shadows twisted in annoyance as if angry at my approach. In the back of the hut, I found a hidden trapdoor half buried in the floor, its surface rotting away. I crouched down, my heart pounding harder than ever, and yanked it open. A dark staircase spiraled down into utter blackness, deeper than the lake itself. The moment I opened it, the shadows screamed in wrath, swirling around me with ferocity. Ignoring the terror rising within me, I clutched the necklace tightly and descended the stairs. Each step felt like an eternity as the coldness of the wood seeped into my bones. With each step further down, the whispers turned into a deafening roar, screaming words I couldn't quite understand but that filled me with dread. At the bottom, I stepped onto hard, cold stone. My flashlight flickered and dimmed, but I forced myself to remain calm, pushing forward into the darkness. The air was thick, heavy with a sense of dread that pulled at my skin. Shadows danced like living things, and I could feel a malevolent presence lurking in the corners. Then I saw them, all the villagers I had freed, trapped in chains forged from darkness. They were gathered in the center of the chamber, their faces pale and haunted, etched with fear and hopelessness. Their eyes gleamed with betrayal, and despair washed over me as I realized they were not free at all. They were trapped in a dark realm that thrived on their pain. The chains binding them glimmered faintly, pulsating with an energy that felt both sinister and alive. Terror gripped my heart as I stepped closer, the shadows around me whispering louder, swarming like angry bees. I could feel their fear radiating, piercing through the darkness, and a chilling realization crept into my mind. These were the same lost souls who had once called to me from the depths of the lake. "Help us!" one villager cried, her voice trembling with despair. I recognized her as the girl who had stood by the water, her blue eyes now filled with sorrow. "They won't let us go. Please, you must help us." The desperation in her voice echoed through the chamber, and I felt the chains imprisoning her and the others pulling tighter, stealing their hope. "I'm here," I shouted back, desperate to comfort them. "I will find a way to free you." My palms felt sweaty as I glanced around, the shadows watching me with hungry eyes, eager to capture me like they had captured these villagers. I realized they were feeding off our fear. I had to be brave and I had to stay focused. Taking a deep breath, I approached the villagers slowly. The chains were anchored into the cold stone floor, but I could see the light of their souls flickering dimly, fighting against the darkness. If only I could find a way to break the chains, I thought desperately. "What keeps you here?" I asked, trying to understand the curse that bound them. The villager with blue eyes glanced around nervously, her voice trembling. "It is the darkness. It feeds on despair. The more we suffer, the stronger it becomes. We need to break the curse." The urgency in her tone heightened my determination. I knew I had to act quickly before the shadows could close in on me. As the shadows swirled closer, I glanced back toward the staircase the way I had come. I felt their coldness wrapping around my legs, pulling me back with invisible strings. "No!" I shouted, shaking my head and pushing forward, forcing myself to focus on the villagers. I pulled the necklace from my pocket, its glow faint but flickering with energy as if it was still connected to the relentless fight. "Maybe this can help," I declared, holding the necklace out toward the villagers. The warm light began to pulse stronger, illuminating their faces. I was filled with a rush of hope as I felt the chains quiver slightly, responding to the light. "Don't stop," they urged, their voices mingling in a chorus of determination. With them urging me on, I concentrated on the light, willing it to grow brighter, pushing against the overwhelming darkness surrounding us. The chains rattled as if they could sense the power I was channeling. I felt the shadows tug more at me, their whispers growing frantic, angry that I dared to challenge their hold. I took a step forward, breathing deeply. "I'm going to set you free," I shouted, my voice echoing through the darkness like a beacon of hope. With all my strength, I raised the necklace higher, feeling its energy spark and grow. Wisps of light began to snake outwards, wrapping around the chains, igniting them with warmth. I could hear the villagers gasping as the chains began to glow, their dense grip faltering under the newfound light. "Keep going," they encouraged, and I could feel their hope rekindling. I poured my energy into the necklace, feeling a connection between me and the villagers. The shadows erupted in rage, howling with fury, trying to extinguish the light. I could feel their cold tendrils snaking around my feet, desperately trying to bring me down, dragging me into darkness. "Not today," I shouted, pushing back against the darkness. I could feel my heartbeat echoing in time with the glowing necklace, the vibrations coursing through my body like a storm. The air around us crackled with energy, renewed life infused into the dark atmosphere. In a final surge of strength, I slammed the necklace down on the chains. A blinding light erupted from it, consuming the darkness like a wave. I felt the chains shatter, the sound echoing hauntingly through the chamber. The very ground shook as a scream of rage tore through the air, primal and furious. Suddenly, a whirlwind of light enveloped the villagers, shimmering like thousands of stars. Their faces filled with relief, joy blooming in their eyes as they felt the chains fall away. The light exploded like a star, illuminating every corner of the chamber. The chains shattered, their pieces disintegrating into fine dust that danced in the air like fragile fireflies. I felt a rush of energy as the villagers broke free, their faces shining with renewed hope. One by one they began to rise, floating upward as though the chains had never existed. The despair that once held them captive evaporated, replaced by a warm glow that enveloped us all. But the shadows did not retreat easily. They writhed and twisted in rage, their howls rising to a terrifying crescendo. The very ground beneath me trembled as the darkness coiled tighter, pushing back against the light. I could see their twisted forms, angry and vengeful, clawing at the light, trying to snuff it out. "Run!" one of the villagers shouted, snapping me back to reality. Their voices were filled with urgency, urging me to escape before the shadows could retaliate. I turned to look at the staircase leading back to the surface, but my feet felt rooted to the ground, caught in the vortex of light that swirled around us. Suddenly, a cold, violent gust pulled through the chamber, threatening to snuff out our light. The shadows lunged at me, their form elongating, fingers like knives searching for a way back into my flesh. "You think you can save them?" one of the dark figures hissed, its voice gliding over me like icy fingers. "You have no idea of the power you are dealing with." I could feel their hatred bearing down on me, the darkness wrapping around my mind, trying to convince me to surrender. Images flashed before my eyes, scenes of despair, suffering, and hopelessness that these shadows had inflicted upon the villagers. I saw the fleeting joys of lives lost in the grip of the darkness, and suddenly, I knew I could not let them win. I took a leap of faith, stretching my hands out towards the glowing villagers. "Together," I shouted, my voice resolute against the chaos. "We have to fight the darkness together." They reached out, their hands glowing brighter, and a wave of radiant light surged through the chamber, pushing back against the shadows. The darkness screamed, its sounds a mix of fury and terror. "You will regret this," it shrieked as the light began to scorch the edges of its form. I felt the weight of fear lifting as the light swelled, expanding outward like a shield. But even in this moment of defiance, I knew we still had a battle to fight. The chamber around us twisted, the air thickening with malevolent energy as the shadows lashed out, desperate to claw us back into despair. I could see glowing eyes hidden in the corners, watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. The energy was palpable. I could feel it buzzing against my skin, both thrilling and terrifying. With renewed strength, I focused again on the necklace. It pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat, and I realized it wasn't just a key to their freedom, it was a beacon of hope. "You are not alone. You belong to the light," I cried, urging the villagers to unite their determination with mine. The necklace sparkled brilliantly, responding to my plea as though it understood the urgency of our cause. The shadows recoiled in pain, twisting as the light pushed them back. The walls of the chamber started to tremble, dust and rubble falling from above like rain. As the villagers surrounded me, their glowing forms expanded, a shield against the darkness. Together, we formed a circle of radiance, pushing further against the encroaching shadows. But even as we stood united, I could see that the darkness had a will of its own. From the edges, it began summoning tendrils of shadow, reaching out to latch onto anything it could grasp. I could hear whispers curling around my thoughts, weaving insidious doubts. "You cannot win," they hissed. "You are only human. You do not belong here." "Enough," I shouted, anger surging through me mixed with fear. The realization that I would not be broken washed over me. "We will not let you take us back." I felt the strength of the villagers next to me, and together we harmonized, our voices rising as one, singing for the light we were fighting for. The shadows howled in rage, their forms undulating in a dance of fury. I noticed they began to pull at the walls, attempting to tear the very stone apart, trying to find a way to engulf us entirely. I refused to let fear take hold, focusing all my energy on the spell of light we had created. My heart thudded wildly in my chest, matching the tempo of the building storm of energy around us. The blinding light surged through the chamber, bright enough to penetrate the darkness swirling within it. As the chains shattered, I watched the villagers, once shackled in despair, now enveloped by a warm glow. Their faces transformed, warmth and hope spilling into their eyes as they took tentative steps forward, free at last from their torment. But my relief was short-lived. The shadows writhed furiously in response, a swirling mass of darkness that seemed to grow stronger as the light expanded. It was as if the very essence of the darkness was screaming in outrage, trying to extinguish the light that had dared to defy it. I could feel their anger slithering around me, cold tendrils writhing and wrapping around my legs like icy chains trying to pull me back into the depths of despair. "No!" I shouted, refusing to back down. I was not going to let the darkness reclaim what it had lost. I gripped the necklace tighter, its light amplifying as if understanding the urgency of the moment. "You will not take them again." The pulse of energy nearly made me dizzy, but I pushed through, determined to maintain the momentum we had gained. As the light grew brighter, I felt the shadows lashing out, trying to disrupt the energy that crackled in the air. They darted toward me, whispers of despair filling my ears, weaving through my thoughts. "You cannot save them. They belong to us." The voices blended into a chaotic symphony, drowning me in panic. My heart raced and I fought back the fear threatening to swell within me. The villagers watched my struggle, their faces filled with a mix of gratitude and concern. I could see that they were scared, not only of the darkness but of what it meant to be free. I needed to solidify that freedom. I needed them to trust that the light would guide them. "Follow me," I yelled, those two words ringing out as a rallying cry. With every ounce of strength inside me, I took a step away from the darkness and toward the staircase I had come down. The villagers followed with hesitant but eager hearts, their flickering spirits bolstered by the light that pushed back against the shadowy figures clawing at us from behind. As we turned to ascend the staircase, the shadows twisted and contorted, reaching for us with desperation. "Don't look back. Keep moving," I urged, feeling the overwhelming presence of the darkness trying to drag me down. The whispers from the shadows grew frantic, clawing at my sense of reality, trying to ensnare me with tales of their power. But I couldn't let them in. The villagers moved together, forming a line of unity behind me, and the light surged brighter as we climbed. At last, I reached the top of the staircase and pushed open the trapdoor with all my might. It swung wide and I felt the cold air wrap around me, sudden like a gasp after drowning. I emerged on the surface, squinting against the sudden brightness of the night sky. The storm above still raged, but the scattered beams of moonlight illuminated the world around me, piercing through the chaos of storm clouds. Catching my breath, I turned around to help the villagers out of the dark confines of the hut. As they stepped into the light, their faces were filled with relief, but their joy was fleeting. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw it, the darkness erupting from the trapdoor, spilling out like black ink spreading across paper, eager to retake what it had lost. "Run!" I shouted, my voice strained as a wave of panic surged through me. The villagers scattered, sprinting through the woods, their laughter mingling with the raging storm. But I could feel the shadows closing in on us, tendrils reaching out to grab the souls that were once captive in the depths. I pushed myself to move faster, matching their pace. But the overly thick air weighed down on me, and every time I shifted my focus from the path ahead, I saw the lurking shapes of the shadows dancing behind me. Hissed curses whispered like foul breath against my neck. Their anger echoed all around, trying to drown out the sounds of the joyful reunion as the villagers escaped the darkness that had bound them. Suddenly, one of the villagers stumbled, falling to the ground with a cry of surprise. My heart dropped as I turned to see a figure dragging him into the shadows, grasping at his legs with shadowy hands that clung like a vice. A shiver of fear shot through me, and without a word, I dashed back toward him, my instincts kicking in. "Help!" he called, eyes wide with terror. The shadows hissed joyfully at their prize, celebrating their capture. I reached out to him, throwing an arm around his shoulder. The blinding light enveloped us, flickering like a star awakening from a long sleep. I watched in awe as the chains shattered, the remnants clattering to the ground like shattered glass. For the villagers, it was like breathing again after years of suffocation. Their faces transformed from fear to hope, and I could feel the power of freedom radiating from them. But even in this moment of triumph, a shadow lingered. The monstrous presence behind us roared in fury, the sound reverberating through the very core of the earth. I turned and my heart dropped. The shadows swirled, coalescing into a massive dark figure that towered over us, its eyes glowing like coals in the night. "You think you can take them from me?" it hissed, a voice dripping with malice and rage. I stumbled backward, feeling the coldness creep back into the air. "This isn't over," the shadow moaned, its voice sliding through the room, wrapping around me like a serpent. The villagers shifted closer to me, their fear palpable, their joy suddenly overshadowed by dread. I knew we had to act fast. It was no longer just about freeing them. I had to protect myself and the very souls I had just saved. Looking around, I noticed the faint light from the necklace still glimmering in my hand. This was our weapon against the darkness. I had to harness its power. Together, I shouted, raising the necklace high above my head. The light soared, illuminating the chamber with a brilliance that pushed back against the encroaching shadows. "We can defeat it." The villagers gathered around me, their own strength returning as they joined in, lifting their hands to the light. As they did, their spirits swirled together, forming a shimmering barrier of hope. I could feel the energy pulsing, weaving through our collective will, pushing against the dark figure looming before us. The shadow writhed, furious at the light that dared defy it. "You cannot escape your fate," it screeched, extending long claw-like hands toward us. I felt their chilling touch brush against my skin, sending icy tendrils of fear curling around my heart. This was the moment everything would change. Either we would break free or we would be consumed by the darkness forever. With renewed determination, I focused all my strength on the light, urging the villagers to push forward, to fight back against the shadows that wanted to devour us. I could see the remnants of fear dance across their faces, but something deeper began to flicker. A flame ignited in their eyes, fueled by the knowledge that they were not alone. "Fight with me," I yelled, channeling my energy into the necklace. The glow brightened, illuminating the entire chamber like the sun breaking through the darkest night. The combination of our wills surged, and I felt the fabric of the darkness rippling in response. The shadow shrieked again, this time filled with pain. "You think you can defeat me? I am eternal," it howled, rage spilling from its mouth in waves that knocked us backward. I clung to the necklace, feeling its warmth seep into my skin, grounding me against the turmoil. I realized then that this wasn't just about the villagers, it was also about me. My own darkness, my own fears that had followed me into this fight. The shadows fed on that fear, using it against me. If I hesitated, I would be swallowed. I had to confront my own dread to truly defeat it. "You are nothing," I shouted, letting the rage build within me as I remembered everything that had brought me to this moment. The dreams, the voices, the struggle to understand. I faced the dark figure boldly, determined to show it the strength of all our light. We will not cower in the dark anymore. Fueled by that defiance, I felt a surge of energy course through me. The light from the necklace burst forth, blinding in its brilliance as it intertwined with the villagers' spirits. We formed a powerful beacon, a radiant force pushing back against the shadow with a ferocity I had never known. As the light crashed against the darkness, the shadow writhed and shrieked, its form beginning to fracture. "No, this cannot be," it screamed, its voice tinged with desperation. I pressed forward, the villagers flush against my back, as we became a single entity of light and hope. With one final surge, I thrust the necklace directly at the shadow's heart, the brilliance exploding in a dazzling inferno of pure energy. The explosion knocked me off my feet as the chamber shook violently. I landed hard against the stone floor, pain shooting through my body. But I forced myself to look up and witness the magnificent sight before me. The light enveloped the villagers, bright and warm, as the chains shattered, falling away like brittle leaves. Gasps escaped their lips, and I could see hope blossoming in their eyes. In that moment, it felt like the weight of the entire village was lifted, their spirits rising like balloons released into the sky. But the exhilaration was short-lived. I could feel the darkness swirling around us, angry and vengeful, refusing to let its prize escape. The shadows thickened into a swirling mass, howling in fury at the loss of their grip on the villagers. I turned, heart pounding, feeling the pressure of their rage closing in on me. "Run!" I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. The villagers needed to escape this place, needed to break free from the darkness that had held them captive for so long. They instinctively followed my voice, moving toward the staircase. But as we rushed toward the exit, the twisting shadows writhed around us, reaching out with icy hands that scraped against my skin. "You think you can take them?" A voice echoed from the depths, deep and resonant, making the very ground tremble. "You will suffer for this." I glanced back just in time to see a figure form in the shadows, its face obscured but its presence overwhelming. Panic surged inside me. "Don't look back. Keep moving," I urged, pressing onward, not daring to take my eyes off the gleaming stairs ahead. The weight of the darkness wrapped around us, but I refused to give in. As we climbed, I felt a cold finger of dread curl around my heart. The shadows began to claw at my back, wrapping around my legs, tugging me down with every step. "Hurry!" I yelled, my voice breaking as the weight intensified. The villagers pushed past me, their determination a flickering light against the encroaching dark. I summoned every ounce of strength, kicking away the grasping shadows trying to pull me back into their depths. We reached the top, spilling out of the trapdoor and into the forest glade. The moon was bright, illuminating the path ahead. For a brief moment I thought we might escape, but the moment was fleeting. The ground shook beneath us and the air turned cold. The shadows poured out like a wave, filling the gap between us and the air. With frantic energy I looked around. I saw the villagers halting in terror, their eyes wide with fear as they turned to face the darkness now creeping toward us from the trees. "What do we do?" one of them cried, her voice a mix of panic and disbelief. I could feel the grip of hopelessness clawing at my throat, but I could not let it consume me. "We have to fight back," I shouted, hoping my words would offer them strength. The necklaces were still radiating light, but it was not enough to push back the shadows. As they lunged forward, I felt the darkness grip my arms, pulling me back again. I struggled fiercely, anger igniting within me. I would not let the fears of the past chain me down again. Use the light. I called to the villagers. Focus on your memories. Think of the life that once was. They looked to one another, hesitant, but then the spark of hope ignited in their eyes once more. One by one, they clutched their chains, and I saw shimmer light emanate from their hands. The shadows hesitated, churning as if caught in a storm. We stood together, the light of the villagers wrapping around us like a protective shield. As I concentrated, visions of laughter and joy flooded my mind. Bright days spent in the sun, children playing, families gathered. The warmth of heart and spirit surged to life within me. The darkness roared in anger, and with our combined power, I could feel the lights pushing back at the oncoming shadows. Now, I shouted, feeling the collective strength of determination and hope rise like a wall. The villagers stepped forward, pooling their energy together, our lights now intertwining like flowing ribbons. We pushed against the encroaching darkness, and I felt the very ground tremble beneath my feet. You cannot take us. I yelled, my voice steady and strong. The shadows writhed like angry snakes, but we held firm. Slowly, the darkness began to recede, hissing as it melted away, retreating into cracks and crevices, vanishing into the night. As the last remnants of shadows dissolved, the moon glowed brighter, a warm and comforting presence illuminating our path forward. We had done it. The villagers remained free, but the panic didn't leave my heart. Something still felt off. Are they really gone? One villager asked in disbelief, clutching her friend's arm. As the chains fell away, a wave of relief washed over the villagers, a sparkling mist wrapping around them like a protective shroud. Their faces glowed with gratitude, the heavy burden of fear lifting, but I could sense we were not out of danger yet. The dark chamber trembled as the shadows howled in fury, their angry voices intertwining in a cacophony of threats. Do not let your guard down. I yelled, my heart pounding as I gathered strength. The shadows writhed, darting closer to the villagers who were now starting to stand, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. I felt the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. They were free but still vulnerable. I could feel the room closing in, the shadows searching for a way to reclaim their lost souls. One of the villagers, a man with deep lines etched across his face, stepped forward. We have to go. We must find a way out. His tone was urgent, filled with fear that seemed to blend into the darkness surrounding us. I nodded, staring at the hazy outlines of the trapdoor that had brought me down here. But before we could retreat, a flash of darkness erupted from the far corner of the chamber, forming into a monstrous figure. It towered above us, shrouded in shadows, its eyes glinting like shards of broken glass, filled with malice. I could feel its sadness, almost palpable, as if it fed off the despair of the trapped villagers. The air crackled with impending danger, and I knew that if we didn't act fast, we would be pulled back into the depths of despair. What are we going to do? Someone whispered, the fear evident in their voice. I turned to face them, trying to project strength and courage, though my own heart raced with terror. We have to fight it, I declared, my voice shaking but resolute. Together. The villagers nodded in agreement, gathering around me, their faces filled with determination. It was reassuring to see the spark of hope igniting within them again. I could feel the energy of the necklace pulsing, a reminder that I wasn't alone. Perhaps we could channel our collective strength to confront the shadow being. Just then, the creature lunged forward, its long limbs reaching out like twisted branches. I jumped back, feeling the ground shift beneath me. The villagers gasped and stumbled, fear blurring their faces. Stay together. I shouted, clenching the necklace tightly in my hand. Light the way. I encouraged, and as if responding to my command, the necklace began to glow brighter. I raised it high, illuminating the chamber, banishing some of the darkness. The creature shrieked, a sound that reverberated through the stone walls, shrill yet hauntingly sorrowful. It staggered back, revealing glimpses of its true form. A tortured soul twisted by rage and sadness, a reflection of the suffering it had caused. I could sense it was feeding off our fear, drawing strength from our terror. With each moment, its shape flickered, revealing faces trapped within its shadowy body, lost souls swallowed by despair. We have to stop this. I shouted, my heart filling with empathy. We can't let it take anyone else. I turned to the villagers, their eyes locked on mine. We need to focus on the light, I urged. Let's draw on our memories, the joy, the love we had. We can break this darkness. As I closed my eyes, I began to think of the happiest memories I had. The laughter at the village gatherings, the warmth of a sunny day by the lake, the love shared between families. I could feel the energy in the room shifting, the air thickening with determination. I could see the villagers doing the same, their faces lighting up as they conjured their own happy thoughts. Suddenly, the necklace sparked intensely, sending ripples of light throughout the chamber. The light turned into a magnificent beam, illuminating the creature, causing it to reel back in pain. Now, I screamed, knowing this was our chance. Together, let's banish the darkness. As the villagers focused their collective energy, they raised their hands, directing the light toward the creature. A blinding flash erupted, and I felt the warmth of hope surging through us as the darkness began to unravel. The creature howled, thrashing wildly as its form flickered and split apart. With one final push, we channeled our memories into the light. The shadows cried out in anger and sorrow, but we stood our ground, refusing to let them win. The light intensified, swallowing the creature whole, wrapping it in luminescence, making it scream in anguish. I watched in awe and fear as the villagers were freed from their chains, their faces glowing with relief and gratitude. But suddenly that feeling of triumph turned sour. The darkness around me roared with rage, furious at losing its grip on the souls it had held captive for so long. The shadows swirled violently, twisting into grotesque forms that seemed to take on a life of their own, reaching out with claw-like fingers to grasp at the escaping light. "Run!" I yelled, my voice cracking as I turned to face the tunnel behind me. The villagers hesitated, still savoring the sudden freedom, but that moment of indecision cost us dearly. The shadows lunged, enveloping one of the villagers, pulling him back into the dark with a chilling scream that sliced through the air like a knife. My heart sank as I realized we were still in great danger. I felt a surge of panic. I couldn't leave anyone behind. Not now. I turned back towards the villagers, desperation rising within me. "We have to go, now!" I shouted again, my voice shaking but fierce. Their eyes widened, understanding the urgency etched across my face. One by one they began to stumble back, trying to regroup. The cries of the trapped villager echoed in my ears, haunting me as I led the others toward the staircase. The shadows screamed in fury, swirling faster, dark tendrils grasping for our heels. I felt the cold air close in around me, like icy fingers wrapping tighter with every passing second. As I reached the stairs, I turned to see the remaining villagers, eyes wide with fear but burning with newfound resolve, following closely behind. The light from the necklace flickered uncertainly now, battling against the encroaching darkness. I could see the fear in their expressions, the overwhelming dread of being pulled back into the void. Just as we reached the surface, the shadows surged forward, crashing against us like a tidal wave. I barely made it through the door of the hut before slamming it shut, my heart racing wildly. But I knew it wouldn't hold them for long. The sound of the door rattling sent chills racing down my spine. I turned to the others, adrenaline coursing through me. "We need to get away from here." As we stumbled into the night, the forest felt alive with ominous whispers, the trees swaying as if alive and watching us closely. I could hear the shadows pounding against the door, screaming in frustration, and I pushed the villagers forward, deeper into the woods. The path ahead seemed to twist and turn, a labyrinth of shadows that felt ready to swallow us whole. Every crack of a branch seemed magnified, filled with the menace of unseen eyes peering out from the dark. The moonlight hardly reached us, and I could feel its absence heavy on my shoulders. With each step, the oppressive dread grew, as if the forest itself was trying to drive us back toward the darkness, coaxing us into surrender. Suddenly, I heard a familiar voice in the wind, twisted and echoing all around me. "You will never escape," it taunted, slicing through the stillness. My heart sank as the shadows danced and darted between the trees, forming shapes that seemed to reach for us. A primal fear settled deep in my bones. "That's not true," I shouted defiantly into the night, hoping to drown out the mocking whispers. "We will not be afraid." But deep down, I felt their claws poised to drag me back, sowing seeds of doubt in my mind. We finally burst into a small clearing, the moonlight breaking through the canopy, illuminating the fog that swirled and clung to the ground. I stopped, glancing back to ensure everyone was with me. The villagers huddled close, breathing heavily, their faces smeared with exhaustion and fear. The woods behind us crackled with energy, shadows dying to escape the trees. "I think we're safe for now," I panted, but even as I said it, I felt the tension in the air. The villagers began to murmur, sharing their fears and doubts, and I could see in their eyes that the stamina needed to escape was slipping away. But then I noticed something in the distance. Amidst the fog, a faint glow caught my eye. It appeared to be flickering, drawing closer. Was it a beacon of hope or another dark trick? I squinted through the mist, trying to decipher what it was. The villagers noticed it too, buzzing with nervous energy. I felt a mix of hope and terror wash over me. Should we go towards it? One villager asked cautiously, glancing nervously back toward the forest. I hesitated, knowing full well how deceptive the darkness could be. But deep down, I felt a pull toward that glow, as if it was calling to me. Yes, we should, I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. It could be our chance to find help. As we moved cautiously toward the light, the fog thickened, wrapping around us like a shroud. Each step forward felt heavier, the night air thick with tension. I could sense the shadows just behind us, biting at our heels, urging us to turn back. With every stride, the glow grew brighter, taking on a human form. An old woman emerged from the fog, her face lined with age and wisdom. She wore a tattered cloak, trailing behind her as she moved. Her eyes glimmered with knowledge and sadness, as if she knew all too well what we had faced. Come closer, she beckoned gently, her voice soft yet firm. I can help you, but you must listen carefully. The villagers looked at me, uncertain but hopeful. I nodded slowly, stepping toward the mysterious figure. What do we need to do? I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and anticipation. Darkness feeds on fear and despair, she replied, her gaze piercing into my soul. To truly defeat the shadows, you must face the source of their power. Only then can you break their hold. I felt a chill shoot up my spine. What is that source? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. The mirror in the heart of the forest, she whispered, her voice tinged with urgency. It reveals what you dread most. You must confront it or remain trapped forever. The shadows around us roared in fury, vibrating through the air, clearly agitated by her words. I could feel the chill from the approaching darkness wrapping tighter around me. The villagers' faces drained of color as reality sunk in. Fear paralyzed us, but there was no turning back. I took a deep breath, mustering every ounce of courage I had left. We can do this, I shouted, raising my chin defiantly at the old woman. We have to try. Gather your strength and stay close, she instructed, her expression serious. Together, you have the power to break the chains that bind you. With her words echoing in my mind, we turned, ready to face whatever awaited us. Shadows writhed around the edges of my vision, but I held on to the villagers, their presence a small comfort against an overwhelming tide of darkness. Driven by desperation and newfound hope, we began to follow the flickering light, deeper into the forest, blind to the dangers that lay ahead. The fear loomed behind us, whispering deceptions as we moved forward. But now, something in our hearts had ignited, a silent promise to face the shadows, to confront the darkness until we emerged victorious. As I looked into the faces of those beside me, I knew we were united, and together we would seek the answers buried in the heart of the forest. As the light enveloped the villagers, they began to lift off the ground, their faces glowing with a mix of joy and disbelief. I could hardly breathe, a wave of relief washing over me, but just as quickly, the shadows hissed and recoiled. They swirled into a thick fog, swirling aggressively around us, angry that their grip was slipping away. Don't let it take you, one of the villagers cried out, her voice trembling as fear filled the air again. The darkness seemed ready to fight back with every ounce of its strength. I felt it surge around us, cold fingers of despair curling around my throat, squeezing tighter. A chill ran down my spine as the shadows whispered my name, their voices like nails dragging across metal. Help us, came the desperate chorus from the villagers, their faces still bright but starting to fade in the growing gloom. They needed me to hold the light to keep it strong, but I could sense that the shadows were regrouping. They had lost their hold temporarily, but I had to make sure they didn't come back stronger than before. Fighting against the crippling fear, I closed my eyes and focused on the warmth of the light in my hand. I could feel the energy surging, pulsing like a heartbeat, and I felt a strange connection with the villagers, a unity born from shared suffering. We will break this curse, I shouted, as much to encourage myself as to rally them. The shadows howled, a chilling sound that echoed off the stone walls. I opened my eyes to see them gathering again, forming thick tendrils like smoke, swirling and twisting into shapes that flickered at the edges of my vision. Their forms morphed into twisted faces, full of malice and rage. There were glimpses of familiar faces, people I'd known, and I felt my heart twist in horror as they laughed mockingly at my fear. Together we can't lose, I insisted, rallying the villagers with words I wasn't sure I believed. My grip on the necklace tightened. You have to believe in the light. It's stronger than the darkness. The villagers nodded, their expressions now mixing hope with determination. I took a step forward, encouraging them to rally around me. Their faces glowed brightly, illuminating the oppressive gloom surrounding us. As I took a deep breath, the energy from the necklace surged through my veins, filling me with warmth. Suddenly, from the thickest part of the darkness, a piercing shriek erupted, reverberating through the chamber like thunder. I stumbled backward, my heart racing as I struggled to remain firm. The shadows twisted violently, revealing a monstrous figure, a face with hollow eyes and an unnaturally wide grin, filled with jagged teeth that gleamed like knives. "Foolish child," it hissed, its voice all whispers and echoes. "You dare to challenge me? You will join them in despair." I felt a wave of dread wash over me, 1,000 voices howling from the shadows, all of them crying out in pain and terror. But I refused to let fear paralyze me. I took a step forward, feeling the warmth of the villagers' faith bolster my resolve. "No," I yelled defiantly. "You don't own us. We will not be your prisoners." The creature recoiled for a moment, and the villagers began to chant, their voices climbing higher, rising like a storm. "We are free. We are not afraid." Each word felt like an arrow piercing the darkness, pushing back against the malevolence surrounding us. I could feel its power waning. As the chant grew, I raised the necklace again, letting its light breathe life into our words. The shadowy figure twisted and shrieked, its form flickering as if at war with the light. Suddenly, one of the villagers, a young boy, stepped forward, fearlessly extending his hand towards the darkness. "We are stronger together," he shouted, his voice a beacon amidst the chaos. His courage ignited something inside me, something that urged me to push even harder against the dark force. The shadows hesitated, forming faint outlines of faces I recognized, lost souls who desperately sought release. My heart ached for them, but I knew I had to be brave to fight for those still trapped in this nightmare. Together. I cried out, feeling a sense of urgency honing my focus. "Let's break this curse. Let's show them what hope can do." With those words, the necklace burst into a radiant beam of light, bathing the room in dazzling warmth. The shadows screamed, a cacophony of rage and fear as I felt the chain of despair shattering around us. Just as I thought we might be victorious, a violent tremor shook the ground, and the chamber began to collapse. I stumbled, bracing myself against an ancient wall, staring in horror as cracks spiderwebbed above us. Dust rained down, making it hard to breathe. Panic surged through the villagers, but I couldn't let that fear win. "Hold on. We can do this," I shouted, trying to inspire the courage we needed to survive. The girl with blue eyes grabbed my arm, her grip strong even as the ground shifted violently beneath us. "We're with you," she declared, and I felt the spark of hope ignite again through our sounds, echoing louder than the death knells of collapsing stone. But then I noticed something fleeting in the corner of my vision, a shift in the darkness. A fleeting shadow moved closer, creeping toward the collapsing light, and I realized it was not finished. The darkness still clung to life, waiting for the moment to strike back. I braced myself, knowing the fight wasn't over yet. The unsettling tension hung thick in the air as I prepared for whatever was to come next.